Welcome all to our discussion of the current Iranian crisis. We are so pleased to have you with us. Immediately, I want to thank our co-sponsors, UCLA International Institute, Center for Near Eastern Studies, Political Science, Near Eastern Languages and Cultures, Luskin Department of Public Policy. These are the most ever UCLA cohorts we've ever had, indicating the importance of this event. And indeed, we have 303 participants who have signed up out of 33 countries. We are fortunate indeed to have been able to call upon three outstanding speakers, and we are delighted that CMED Salameh Mahajer agreed to moderate this panel. Salameh has been highly influenced by Iranian history. Indeed, her life story reflects the impact of the Iranian revolutions. She was born in Iran, but soon thereafter, her family moved to the Philippines so her father could continue his studies. However, while her family was living in the Philippines, Iran underwent cataclysmic changes when the Shah was overthrown. In the middle of all this conflict, the effects of that revolution reached the Philippines when the Mahajers were forced to leave the country. Given the uncertainty of life in Iran, they came to Los Angeles to visit relatives. Salameh grew up in a Farsi-speaking family whose presence in Los Angeles could be viewed as being a result of an Iranian revolution. It is not surprising that Salameh is intensely interested in the conditions in Iran and has immersed herself in following any news from there. After all, unlike what happens in Las Vegas, what happens in Iran does not stay in Iran. It directly influences Salameh. I am pleased to introduce Salameh Mahajer, who will lead our program today. Salameh?
Thank you, Steve, for the intro and for the opportunity to be a part of this discussion. Hello to everyone from around the world, and thank you for joining us today. As many of you know, today marks 41 days since Mahsa Jina Amini, a 22-year-old Kurdish Iranian woman, died at the hands of the brutal Islamic regime in Iran. Since then, Iranians have swallowed their fears each day and have taken to the streets relentlessly to protest Mahsa's death and to demand regime change. Despite internet shutdowns, the world watches video snippets cautiously captured and shared on social media whenever web connection is made available. While news coverage has been sparse, to say the least, the diaspora and other supporters have managed to spread the word and have staged massive weekly demonstrations across the globe. Meanwhile, world leaders appear to be largely silent, inactive, or seem to downplay what is actually happening on the ground, leaving the Iranian community perplexed. We are here today with three phenomenal Iranian women experts, all of whom have been actively following, writing about, and discussing the current state of Iran. Our aim is to unpack a little bit of this complicated movement that many consider to be Iran's fourth revolution. Our first speaker is Dr. Haleh Esfandiari, an Iranian-American scholar and former journalist, who is an expert in Middle Eastern women's issues, contemporary Iranian intellectual politics, and democratic developments in the Middle East. She is Director Emerita of the Middle East Program at the Wilson Center in DC, who named their annual lecture on women's empowerment in the MENA region, the Haleh Esfandiari Forum. Among her many honors is the Equality Award from the National Council of Women's Organizations. She is author of My Prison, My Home, which is a personal account based on her arrest and imprisonment at the infamous Evin prison in Tehran, where she was held for 110 days in 2007. She was charged with seeking to topple the Islamic establishment. Haleh was born and raised in Iran and has lived in the US since 1978. Like many, she left to escape the Islamic regime after the revolution. Because of her imprisonment, Haleh can no longer visit her homeland. To help us contextualize the current movement, Haleh will share with us the status of women prior to and after the 1979 revolution. Khalijan Befamain.
Thank you.
Merci.
Thank you very much, Salome. Thank you, Mani, although I don't see you. And thank you, Steve. It's a pleasure to be here with two speakers who belong to the younger generation of activists and scholars. Let me give you a brief background on the women's movement in Iran, and then talk a little bit about what goes on today. The first time the Iranian women came out into the street was during the constitutional revolution, and they demonstrated side by side with men. And when there was a transfer of power from an autocratic regime to a constitutional monarchy, unfortunately, the first constitution ignored completely the women who had participated in those demonstrations. So women didn't get the right to vote, nor the right to get elected to parliament, nor although all Iranians in that constitution were termed as equal, women were not at all considered as equal citizens. The main changes in the status of women before the revolution started with the Pahlavi dynasty. When Reza Shah came to power, probably influenced by what was happening in neighboring Turkey, he decided to open up the society for women. So we had girls' schools were started. They were side by side with boys' schools. Eventually, you had elementary coeducational schools, which was quite a new thing. Then in 1936, the Women Teachers College was inaugurated. And it was in that college that that Reza Shah announced the abolition of the veil. And that took everybody by surprise, and it was quite a shock for the society. And it was, a number of women welcomed it. Other women decided that they would not put up with it. And for example, to give you a personal example, my own grandmother didn't leave her house for 7 years, but she had the means to stay put, while other women who didn't want to get rid of their chador were forced to remove it. And it's interesting to see that 43 years ago, the first demonstrations in the Islamic Republic was also against the mandatory, this time the mandatory imposition of the hijab. And now 7 weeks ago, a woman was killed because she was showing some hair, and we have had this protest movement. Among other achievements of that period was the opening of employment to women. So under Reza Shah, women started having access to government offices and private sector and could work there. The opening of Tehran University was also a big step. In 1936, 12 women were among the first class of Tehran University, and neither the professors were used to teach women, nor the librarian. The librarian put a corner of the library and put curtains around it for the women who refused to go and of course sit there. Or the professors would hardly look in the face of the women when they were teaching a class where there was a woman student. But the main change came for women came in the 60s and 70s in Iran. And I personally, first of all, the right to vote and to be elected to parliament in 1963. And so gave a chance to women activists who have been working over a period of 30, 40 years to get the suffrage, finally succeeded. So we owe it to the women activists and also to a system that was willing to give the opportunity to women. And the family protection law, I think, was the masterpiece of all the laws passed for women's rights under that regime. For the first time, women had the right to go and seek a divorce. Child custody was given to women. Until then, if a husband died, the custody would automatically go to the male member of the family. The age of marriage was raised from 13 to 15 and eventually to 18 for girls. Equal access to education, equal access to employment, and women could become judges and lawyers, and family protection courts were set up to look at family disputes. And women were appointed to the cabinet. We had a minister for women's affairs, a minister of education, both women, both very active in their field. And unfortunately, the Minister of Education, Farrokh Parsa, was the first woman who was executed under the previous regime. During fast forward, I think I just have 2 more minutes. When the Islamic Revolution happened, women had taken part in large numbers in their activities and efforts that led to the Islamic victory of the Islamic Revolution. But one of the first decisions of the new government was to suspend the family protection law. And this affected women from all stratas of the society. The age of marriage for girls was reduced to puberty, which is 9. Women could no longer go to court and seek a divorce. The family protection court were closed. Polygamy became the law of the land. Temporary marriage was encouraged. And the mandatory hijab was imposed on women. But it didn't take long for women to decide that the new government is not going to expand their rights, but they are going to witness a contraction of their rights. So therefore, they started coming out into the streets, first, as I said earlier, protesting the mandatory hijab, and then later on, working against all these measures that put the rights they had gained on hold. And I think we have seen that over the years, women continued to struggle. And although they are considered second-class citizens and are humiliated and so on, but they are at the forefront of any change. And we have a lot of respect for what the younger generation is today, the Gen Z, as they call them, is doing today in Iran. I think the most important decision these young people have made is that they are not scared of getting killed. Therefore, they come out night after night after night. And if it wasn't for women, I don't think, this is a personal opinion, I don't think these protest movement would have lasted that long. Thank you.
Thank you, Hale Jan, for that very important context. The more I learn, the more fascinated I become. Our next speaker is Dr. Mahia Ostovar, a self-proclaimed feminist and an Iranian women's rights activist, whose primary focus has been the equality of women and their bodily rights. During PhD studies in France, Mahia researched women-led fights against mandatory hijab in Iran, such as My Stealthy Freedom and White Wednesdays, both of which are credited by many as the seeds of the movement we are witnessing today. She was an active participant in the No to Hijab campaign, which calls on Iranian women not to wear the headscarf in Iranian public. After an Iranian female football fan was arrested for attempting to enter a stadium and later tragically died by self-immolation, Dr. Ostovar co-founded Let Women In, a project that lobbied FIFA to take concrete actions against Iran's statewide segregation. Mahia was born and raised in Iran under the Islamic regime and only left 10 years ago. Because of her research, she does not want to risk a return to Iran. She has lived in various parts of Europe since and is currently a lecturer at the University of Galway, Ireland. Mahia has been tirelessly sharing news from Iran with her 12,000 Twitter followers during the past 5 weeks. To bring us up to date, she will highlight several key events that have taken place on the ground since the protests began, help us to understand what people are demanding, and talk about how people are getting information to organize and gather. Mahia Jan, take the microphone.
Hi, everyone. Thanks, Salome Jan, and thanks, everyone, for having me today here. So I want to start with the most recent episode of Iran Revolution. So as you might know, yesterday marked the 40th day after Mahsa's murder. And despite violent repression from the regime, which we have seen during these past 40 days, they have killed like hundreds of people. Still, thousands went to Saqqez, Mahsa's hometown, to her grave to keep her memory alive and to show that the revolution is still alive, and even probably more than before. So videos that we have seen from yesterday from all across the country tells us that people have become even braver and more determined. So probably all of you know that the protest started with Mahsa Amini's murder, a 22-year-old woman being killed by the hijab police for not respecting properly hijab. The thing that we need to remember is that this systematic violence against Iranian women is not, of course, new. I mean, this fight and resistance has been going on for more than 40 years. And during past years, there has been multiple campaigns against compulsory hijab going on. For example, as Salome also mentioned, My Stealthy Freedom, White Wednesdays. And Iranian women, step by step, they have learned and they have become braver, and they have learned how to basically defy a law like compulsory hijab. So this violence, again, is not something new. One of the things that I think linked Mahsa Amini's murders to such a great collective action in Iran is that Iranian women could identify with Mahsa. And this is more than just sympathizing with her story. They could see themselves as Mahsa. Any woman who has lived in Iran after the Islamic Revolution and who doesn't believe in hijab could be basically Mahsa. So that's why they could really identify with Mahsa's story and Mahsa's murder. They could see themselves being killed by the morality police. And Mahsa has become the symbol of this revolution, and is important because someone who belongs to two of the most marginalized groups has become the symbol of this revolution. She was Kurd and she was a woman. So two groups that have experienced intense discrimination and violence from the regime throughout these 40 years. So she was Kurd, and it's not surprising that this protest started from Kurdistan. and basically her hometown during her funeral. And some of the most brave acts of defiance that we see right now all across the country, and some of the most important slogans came from Kurdistan. For example, the slogan that we all know right now, "Woman, Life, Liberty," comes from Kurdistan. But of course, very soon it has spread to all over the country, and it isn't limited to one group or one region anymore. And this is one of the reasons that I believe this is a revolution, because basically I haven't seen Iran and different groups of Iranians united as they are right now, because we have seen different protests during these past years, but this time really feels different. But of course, as we have all seen, women are in the forefront, in the front lines of this revolution. Really young women, teenage girls, high schoolers are performing acts of defiance that we have dreamt for so long of doing them, but we have never dared to do. For example, they're burning their scarves, they're taking off their scarves, they are tearing up photos of Supreme Leader. And I remember very clearly one of the scenes from second or third day of the protests. And you might have also seen the video. It was a video from Sari. People were basically gathering around fire, dancing, and then young women, they were burning their scarves in the fire. And for me and many others, it was like we were watching our dream coming true. So I think Iranians, we have experienced something new during these past 40 days. And Iranians have experienced resistance and freedom in a way that they cannot go back to what was going on 40 days ago. Everything has changed for us, for Iranians, and for the regime too. So there is no going back to what was before. But of course, this hasn't been and will not be easy. Nothing can stop the regime from its brutal violence against protesters. We have seen tens of people being killed, young women and teenage girls getting killed. For example, Nika, Sarina, Hadis, Ghazaleh, they are all Mahsa. They are teenage girls, they're in their 20s, 17, 16 years old, have been killed just for protesting. And one important thing that we should remember is that the message of this protest is very clear. People don't recognize the Islamic Republic as their legitimate government anymore. Their slogans are very radical and they're targeting the whole regime. They're saying down with the dictator, death to Khamenei. They made it clear that they don't want this regime anymore. The other important events that has happened during these past 40 days is that, for example, workers went on strike. And for example, if you think of Iranians diaspora, because there are really different groups in the diaspora, and I've never seen them this united before. So they all feel that they should do something for Iran. They should be the voice of Iranians inside Iran. And they are organizing rallies. Thousands of them are gathering in different cities all over the world. For example, just this Saturday, we had a big rally in Berlin, which around 80,000 people were gathered, which is surprising, and we haven't seen that before. One thing that I think we should remember this time, although we are all kind of sad and horrified seeing the news and hearing that people have been killed, some of the videos are really horrifying. For example, there were 2 videos that people were recording the events and we were watching it. It was from the point of view of 2 women who were recording the events, and suddenly they're shot. The camera is thrown on the ground and it's horrifying. It's like we are kind of getting shot when we are watching the video. So although we are really, horrified of these events, these scenes that we are seeing, but we are also, I think, hopeful, because people are determined, and they're unbelievably brave because they know that they can get killed. They have seen that this regime is able to kill teenagers, children, but they're still on the street protesting, and their demands are really radical. The values that they're representing is very progressive. This is probably one of the most progressive revolutions, and some calls it even the first feminist revolution. So they are fighting for woman life liberty. So what I think and what I want to basically end my talk with is that I think every one of us should be their voice, because they need all kind of international support that they can get. Thank you.
Thank you, Mahia John. I was getting goosebumps when you were sharing, recapping everything. To see it all being laid out in one 10-minute presentation, it's just very intense. It's been a wild month. Okay, so moving on to our final speaker, Dr. Sara Bazubandi, a political economic analyst and academic who has worked with various international corporate organizations, policy advisory institutions, and think tanks. She is an expert on Iran, the Gulf, and the Middle East in general. She is currently a Marie Curie Research Fellow at the Institute for Middle East Studies at the German Institute of Global and Area Studies. Sara is also a senior non-resident fellow at the Atlantic Council, a non-resident fellow at the Arab Gulf States Institute in Washington, and a non-resident fellow at ISPI Milan. She's basically very busy. She was a senior lecturer in international political economy at Regent's University in London from 2013 to 2018, and a research fellow at the National University of Singapore from 2011 to 2012. Dr. Bazubandi has also worked in the infrastructure construction sector in Iran. Her education background includes a civil engineering degree obtained in Iran and a Master's of Science and PhD that she completed in the UK. She grew up in Iran and has been living in Europe since 2005. She has not been able to return to Iran since the Green Movement. Sara will discuss how US sanctions and the handling of finances by the regime has impacted the people and economy in recent times, and how that has contributed to the current demonstrations and worker strikes. She will also talk about the current relationship between the US government and the IRI, particularly as it relates to the JCPOA nuclear deal, examining whether a release of US sanctions would help the people at this point. Sara Jan, take it away.
Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here this evening. I very much appreciate all the interventions made by two other excellent speakers. I'm going to only focus on economic aspects of things. And my focus doesn't mean that, as previously was mentioned, there aren't various layers and various factors playing into forming the current crisis in Iran. The crisis is not only an economic related crisis. The grievances of people go way beyond economic challenges that they are facing on their day-to-day lives. But I will focus only on this aspect, and perhaps later we could elaborate and I could share my views on other questions as well. The first question I would like to address is that how a combination of sanctions and other factors formed domestically have shaped the current environment, economic environment in Iran, and how does Iranian economy look like today as we see it? I always summarize the factors that affect Iranian economy as the following. Structural problems that existed for several decades of bad policy choice and mismanagement of the economy, corruption, which has been extremely violent, extremely open and evident over the past years, and sanctions that has been hitting hard over the past decade or so. So to attribute all the economic problems of today Iran to the international sanctions, I strongly object that, and I feel the economic pressure is not only a single caused by a single factor, that being the sanctions. So how does the economy look like today? We have had extremely high inflation, for above 40% for 4 consecutive years. I'm sure for those of us who lived in fairly stable economies in the developed world for a good part of our lives can not even imagine what if 40% inflation per year could mean for the livelihood of the people. As a result of this high inflation, of course, the people's purchasing power and welfare has been affected. People have fell into poverty rapidly. And according to the government reports and government news coverages, more than 60% of Iranians now live under poverty. And this is a country that sits on 2/3 of global gas reserves and abandoned oil reserves, extremely rich from natural perspective, yet extremely deprived and extremely poor. The other factor that has been sort of affected as a result of this a combination of structural problems, sanctions, and corruption that I mentioned, is high unemployment. The extremely high percentage of the young and educated Iranians have faced difficulties and found it challenging to find jobs. And that has also been a cause of grievance and cause of socioeconomic problems. And specifically with regards to women, since 1990s, women participation in labor force in Iran until today has varied between 10 to 20% maximum. And for a country of 80 plus million population today, having such a low female participation to labor force is quite a socioeconomic disaster. It's a ticking bomb. It has had even lower female participation in labor force Iran has had lower than countries across the region like Turkey and Saudi Arabia. So you can imagine how the Iranian population, the Iranian female population specifically, have positioned themselves in the socioeconomic map of the country. Now, the next question is that how has the current economic environment, the current socioeconomic environment, contributed to the uprising, this uprising? I would say, of course, economic problems, economic grievances are playing an important role in this. 60% of the population lives under poverty. 1 in every 5 Iranian women only has a chance to participate in the labor force and find jobs. Inflation has been extremely high. The gap between the rich and the poor had been extremely high. And what people have found themselves is surrounded by a political elite which controls the resources, owns all the economic activities literally in the country that are profitable, whilst the rest of the nation is deprived and doesn't have the chance and opportunity to take part in economic activities. So of course this is going to make people extremely angry and send them to the streets. And this is not the first round. Since 2009, 2017, 2019, and 2022 this year that we're facing, there has been cycles of uprising. So grievances have accumulated. People have tried to show their anger and their frustration to the establishment. And today what we see is that the people are matching the political obtuseness of the political elite and the ruling elite in Iran with extreme courage. Some of the examples that Mahia, for example, outlined cannot be explained by any other words than courage. The system, the regime has shown absolutely zero flexibility towards people's demand, have shown zero sensitivity towards people's economic challenges, and blatantly just increase economic, political and social pressure on them. And of course, this is the result of it, as we can see. The next question is what's the state of JCPOA, and how a potential JCPOA, a potential nuclear deal, revival of a nuclear deal with Iran could look like. And I'm going to bundle these two questions together and try to share my views on these with you. JCPOA, first of all, the nuclear deal now is a point of contention amongst Iranian public. There is huge disagreement towards JCPOA. People are publicly demanding policymakers to stop any form of negotiation with Iranian government. There are petitions that are going around to be submitted to the G7, to the G7 countries to even expel Iranian diplomats from their capitals. But of course, from the point of view of the international community, the nuclear threat and the question of Iranian nuclear program and the risk that it's imposing on the non-proliferation effort across the world is a serious one. So stopping any form of negotiation would mean either accepting Iran as a nuclear power, or getting into war with Iran. And that has been an understanding, a public understanding across the world, that we have two choices with the Islamic Republic. We either have to deal with them and negotiate with them, or we have to bomb them. And I think I want to say that the Iranian public, the majority of them at least, are offering a third option, and that is neither bombing Iran is a solution, nor making another deal with Iran to lift the sanctions from the regime and provide them with abundant resources and right to continue legitimate economic activities in the global community and use the resources and the proceedings towards promoting their own political and security agenda across the world. And the third option is to make human rights at every single conversation that you have with the Islamic regime, to demand protection of human rights. And I'm going to end my remarks with this point, that Iranians have been caught in hypocrisy at home and abroad. Hypocrisy of the regime who deprived them from the resources, yet their own families and they themselves live in luxury lifestyles and lavish lifestyles. And the hypocrisy of the international community, which has turned blind eye against all the atrocities that is taking place in Iran. And I think this is the moment that it has to be changed. So we can discuss these points in further details, and thank you for the opportunity that was given to me.
Thank you, Sara Can, for helping us understand the economy component here, which can be quite tricky to understand. Thank you, Sara. Thank you to all our speakers for helping us to better understand the context and current situation. We will now move into the Q&A portion of the webinar. As a reminder, if you would like to ask one of our speakers a question, please type your name, country, and/or affiliation into the question window at the bottom of your screen. Unfortunately, we won't be able to answer your question if you do not include that information. Please remember that I will announce your name and your country affiliation when I ask your question, and that this is being recorded. Keep your questions concise, please, so we can answer as many as possible. And as those questions, we've had a few already, but as the rest of them are coming in, I would like to ask the panel two important questions. Feel free to answer, or if you don't want to and you want to pass, that's fine as well. If you could mold an Iran, what would that look like? What do you envision for Iran's future in your wildest dream? And realistically, what do you think will happen next? Where is all of this leading us? And also I'll open the floor for anyone who wants to take the microphone. Nice to see you again.
So maybe I'll start again. We go in the reverse order this time. So, you know, what kind of Iran do we want to mold? An Iran that is based on political and social justice. The rule of law is strong. Halajan mentioned in detail about the laws, anti-women laws, and the flaws that have been existing in the system. The use of ideology to infiltrate women and those who do not comply with this ideology has been an important barrier for excluding various segments of the society, from ethnic minorities, from religious minorities, from people with different political views, you name it. So my ideal Iran is an Iran that has overcome all of these and is based on justice, and it allows equal representation of every segment of the society. Is an Iran that rule of law is so strong that we don't see cases like embezzlement and fraud that we are witnessing these days and for the past several years in Iran. Only a few months ago, one of the biggest steel manufacturing companies in Iran, which has been government owned since the revolution and then partly privatized recently, reported the loss of $3 trillion in embezzlement and siphoning of the funds. So where is this money going is beyond me. But we want an Iran that these kind of cases and these practices doesn't happen in it. We want an Iran that is behaving like a normal, responsible international player. We want an Iran that allows us to have access to the global community, not filtering internet and shutting down internet on the civilians and turning the lights off and starting to kill people. So imagining a molded Iran, the molded Iran would be like any other normal country. What the Iranians want is simply to have a normal life. And there has been an online campaign with a hashtag even with this for the past years, that Iranians are demanding a normal life. They are not demanding anything unimaginable, anything out of ordinary. It's just to have their basic rights as we, me and you, people like us, are enjoying it in this part of the world.
If I may add, so exactly, I mean, as Sarah said, I completely agree with her. I mean, I think, the ideal Iran would be a secular, democratic country that is inclusive for the groups that right now are marginalized, and for the main slogan of the movement to be realized: woman, life, freedom. And exactly what this new generation, people that are on the street, they want is exactly normal life. And I just wanted to add that for me right now, it's easier to imagine this Iran, because what I see on the street or what I see in different cities, that people right now are united. We didn't expect that different regions of the country to be that united, to say that, for example, to call the names of the cities, the name of the regions, and say that all over the country we are together, or for men and all other groups to be supporting women or like other marginalized groups. So again, this is, for me, it's right now, it's easier to imagine this future because I can see it in the videos. I can see it in people demands. So it's kind of not hard to imagine anymore as it was probably before this. So we are probably kind of surprised by what we're seeing right now, but it's good because now we can, to some extent, be more certain that the future of Iran can be brighter than we expected.
Being much older than my two fellow panelists, and I'm a bit more a realistic person, and I would love to see Iran as described by Sarah, by Mahia, but it won't happen so soon and immediately. It is going to be a process of, if we want a democratic Iran, it will be a process of maybe a number of years. And what I really don't want is that there is a lot of promises and then the people will be very badly disappointed because I witnessed what happened in 1978 when millions of women and men went into the streets and thought that the next regime will bring for them something extraordinary that they never had. I think this time they want change. They want fundamental change. This is obvious. But what kind of a road they have to take to achieve this fundamental change, we don't know. If you look at the example of other countries, eventually these movements need a leadership, who would galvanize the people and who would show them what will happen at the end of the road. While I'm full of admiration, I told you, for the women who are the leaders of this recent protest movement, and if it wasn't for them, by now everything would have come to an end. I just think that it is going to be a long process to get to what Sarah was hoping. But I agree with both of them that the focus should be at this point and at any point when you negotiate or talk to Iran or about Iran, respect for human rights, freeing all the prisoners. At this point, any country who is talking to the Iranian government should ask for the release of all the prisoners, children, 10 years old, 15 years old, 20 years old to 70 years old, whoever they have arrested, they should just free them, And I just think it is going to take a bit longer than what we hope.
Merci, thank you. So what do you all think will happen next? Where are we headed?
Shall I go first? I just think that, first of all, I don't want to speculate, but I think the last 6 weeks has shown us that this movement is not going to end, precisely because there is no leader and precisely because it's sporadic, you see. So night after night, in different sections of any town and cities, the young people who call each other all the time with their cell phones or send text messages or hashtags or whatever will come out, will demonstrate. Some of them will get killed, unfortunately, but it won't end. We will have a winter of discontent ahead of us. But on the other hand, I just don't see the government, taking an inch of showing some kind of, understanding what the grievances of the people is. So I only hope that while this continues, the international world will not just forget them and will not have a sense of fatigue from day after day of demonstration in Iran, because that will be a big disappointment for the young people who are in the street.
Yes, thank you. Look, as Halajan mentioned, we don't have a crystal ball. It's very hard to speculate. Events are unfolding real fast. We have the track record of the Islamic Republic in Iran and the way that the regime is willing to use extremely violent and brutal means. They are not ashamed of killing. They are not ashamed of arresting. They're not ashamed of raping and torturing. We have seen these cases and we witnessed them before our eyes. And of course, there are various factors that are going to play in shaping the future. The most important factor is the people. They are not going to back up, as Mahia mentioned. I think Iranian public have reached a point of no return. But it also very much depends on external factors. Halajan correctly mentioned about the international community and the reaction, and hopefully the follow-on support for Iran. Because, as I mentioned, this hypocrisy have been really, really affecting people. Mahia mentioned the girl that was not allowed to enter football stadium, and she dressed as a boy, and then she got caught, and she was handed a prison sentence, and she put herself on fire, and she ended her own life. What did the international community do? Absolutely nothing. What did FIFA do? Absolutely nothing. In 2019, Reuters itself reported 1,500 people were shot dead with military weaponry in various parts of the country. What did the United Nations do? Absolutely nothing. Not even one resolution was extended towards Iran. What did the Western world do? What did the European Parliament do? What did the US administration do? Absolutely nothing. The world has just sat back, relaxed, and just watched Iranians fall into misery. The developed world, have let down many nations in that part of the world: Afghanistan, Syria, Yemen, Lebanon, you name it. I do hope, as an Iranian, that we are not going to be the next country. It's a big hope, and it really requires international support. And the support that I'm talking about goes well beyond just issuing statements that we are extremely concerned by the developments in Iran. That, I think we are beyond that point. Inside and outside of Iran, Iranians are demanding way more serious and tangible supports. One way is extending more sanctions, as various leaders across the world have done, but that shouldn't end there. The pressure should continue. And I strongly believe that the one single reason that the Iranian government, after 5 weeks, haven't started shooting everyone on the streets is because Iran is under international spotlight. The moment the international support and international attention ends, the mass killing will begin. So if we do not want to see a mass killing inside Iran, when we do want people to keep strong and pushing for their demands, we should, as Mahia mentioned, we should be the voice of the voiceless inside Iran.
Thank you, Sarajan.
Yeah, I mean, as Hala and Sarah said, I mean, it's not, we shouldn't speculate. It's not easy to predict what's going to happen, because we didn't expect what's happening right now 40 days ago, to be honest. So, of course, we can analyze the events, but the events are unfolding. So even when we are analyzing them, we should be aware that they can change. So, I mean, what Sarah said was really, I mean, for me, it's really sad listening to that, but it's true. The international community has failed us so many times, not only Iranians, many other countries, many other nations. And I feel this is one of the first times that Iranians feel they're seen, they're heard by the world. And this is heartwarming, and this is helpful in the sense that, as Sarah mentioned, if we are not seeing mass killing, of course they have killed tens of people, but if we haven't seen mass killing because they are afraid of international reaction. So I guess we should continue echoing the voice of people. But also one thing that I want to add is that many Iranians, I think, they have this feeling that this time is different. And it's not easy to predict. And I prefer to kind of trust this gut feeling of Iranians, because we have seen protests before. It's not our first time. So we have seen 3 years ago a protest all over the country that was suppressed violently. But these protests are going on for now 5 weeks. And it seems unstoppable. We have reached a point that people are not giving up. And of course, the government as well, they are not giving up. This is a fight. So either they're going to kill everybody, I mean, most of Iranians, or, I mean, there's no way back. This is really a fight between who are in power and powerless. But I think, I mean, it's not, again, easy to predict, but I think this fight somewhere has to end. So either we are gonna win or they are gonna win. So there's no other kind of end for this.
Thank you, everybody. There's so much to talk about. Obviously, 90 minutes is not going to be enough. We have a lot of questions from the audience, so I'm eager to jump into those. Audience, we're trying our best to get to all of you. I'm going to start with Sima Kalisiglu. I probably said that wrong. Apologies. From Turkey, our dear friend. She says, having no leader in these protests, do you think the protesters, women and men, have any medium or long-term strategies? And so far as we know, there are only 16 female members out of 290 of the current Iranian Majlis. Do any of them seem somewhat supportive or sympathetic of these protests at all? Interesting question. So anyone who wants to take it, and ladies, if you could try to limit our responses so that we can get to as many as possible. Thank you so much.
I would like to just address the leadership question very quickly. Yes, there has been a vacuum of leadership, but the response that has been given internationally and the unification of the people outside of Iran has led to making some serious negotiations between various interest groups outside of Iran, and there is a willingness for everybody to unite and to gather the forces together behind one figure or a group of figures. Of course, after the experience of 1979, everybody wants to be super cautious. Nobody wants to become the next dictator of Iran, and that is why both people and those who are willing to lead are extremely cautious. But there are negotiations, there are conversations, and you know, when people say there is no leadership, I feel it's a little bit unfair. We have various figures, for example, family members of the bereaved families of those who have been innocently killed by the Iranian Revolutionary Guards 2 years ago in the sky. Daylight, the IRGC, have shot a passenger flight in the sky that was destined from Iran to Ukraine. And the family of the victims have gathered together and they formed an association, and they've been fighting for justice, and they've been fighting for bringing those responsible to this for this event to justice. And there is one individual in this group that when he calls for gathering, 80,000, 100,000 people get together in the city of Berlin, and that happened only 1 week ago. I'm not trying to you know, create a hero here or anything, but I'm just saying that if this is not a leadership, then what does leadership mean? Of course, the people keep reminiscing about how Khomeini had a fund to distribute cash amongst those who went on strike, and we don't have that fund, but there's conversation about that. So there is a process, it's evolving, but it's not a complete vacuum in my opinion.
If I can add to that. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I totally agree with Sarah that, I mean, we don't have kind of leaders probably inside Iran for obvious reasons, because first of all, even right now, 90% of political opposition are in prison. So there can't be an organized group or leaders inside Iran. So that's one thing. But I believe that, yeah, one missing piece of puzzle here is a coalition of opposition. And people are calling for that. For example, on social media, you see that people call names that these people, these figures should form a coalition and, for example, start negotiating with Western governments. Of course, various people are doing that individually, but I feel the coalition would be really helpful. As Sarah mentioned, for example, Hamed Esmailion from the grieving families of PS 752, or for example, I think Masih Alinejad. These are people that can start a coalition, can stand together until basically the revolution, until we can have a democratic election inside the country. Then people can decide for themselves, for the leaders of the government, of course. But I believe that, yeah, this is a missing piece of puzzle that we should think of and we should push for, because this can help people inside Iran. Because if we can, to some extent, convince the world that, okay, we have a plan and we have people that you can negotiate with, I think it would be easier to convince them to not recognize the Islamic Republic as the government, as people of Iran don't recognize it anymore. And about the representative in the parliament, no, I mean, of course, there haven't been any support from them. I mean, one thing that we should kind of understand about Iran is that all kind of officials or people in the government, they are against these protests. And as people say it, both parties, you would call them hardliners or reformists, people don't want any of them anymore. So they are done with the whole regime.
I have a question from Mehdi Barati. What should the public and scholars like yourself do to request meaningful accountability and pressure on these dictators? And I'm going to add another question, just because we have so many. And then we have one from Gary Grappo from the US. With no apparent leadership or formal organization, how do protesters actually change leadership or policies? I think you guys sort of addressed that already, but go ahead and respond as you see fit. Thank you.
Look, during the Islamic Revolution of 1979, you not only had a leader sitting in Iraq, but you had inside the country a network of mosques and clerics that were very instrumental. And we need something at least similar inside the country. It's fantastic that we have the diaspora is so active, but these people are getting killed on the ground. And you know, when my understanding of leader was also a leader from within the country, and I remember many years ago when I was interviewing a group of women in Iran, and I said, you know, they were complaining, and I said, okay, what about a protest movement? How do you see? And she looked at me and she said, you know, whenever you people who talk about a protest movement would come to Iran and walk ahead of the march, we will follow you. And that stayed with me, you see. And I look at the ground and I say, yes, you know, they are so brave. They are on the street. They do everything they can. When I meant that there is no leadership, at least I have not seen a leadership inside Iran. I mean, the leaders are these women who come out and who just invite people to join them and get killed. But what is also puzzling for me is that traditionally the high-ranking ayatollahs from home usually take a stand on these issues. And this, you know, because it's the question of people, you know. So this time there has been total silence, I think, except one or two who in the early days of the protest movement said something. It's total silence there, total silence in parliament. And the one woman vice president of Mr. Raisi came out in support of the military forces. So, you know, I mean, there is a united front in the government, and there is a united front on the other side. So we just have to wait and see where it will take us.
May I just add one quick point? The network of clergies and the network of mosques and the way that they communicated and the way that they mobilized, all fair and well, and I accept it. But this Gen Z that you talked about them, Halijan, yourself, or as I refer to them, the TikTok generation, because their attention span is short as a TikTok video. They are concise, they are clear, they know what they want, and they know how to ask it. And they are completely different than like my generation. We were raised and taught how to put up with hypocrisies. This generation doesn't do that. They don't want to put up with hypocrisy anymore. This mobilization is happening with their mobile phones. The communication that Khomeini would send a cassette of his speeches to an imam in a mosque to be distributed across that neighborhood is now happening live through satellite TV channels and, you know, through hashtags and through Twitter communication. I don't want to sound like I'm just living in a bubble that, you know, it's a bubble of telecommunication. Elites, the cafe latte drinkers, you know, coffee shop goers and mall goers of north of Tehran. No, the internet usage is extremely wide across the country. We see it from the videos, the smallest towns that are, you know, taping their demonstrations, the footages, they're sharing it with the world. So I totally understand with you, but I also think that there is more caveat into this. The time has changed, the world has changed. Meaning of leadership and what the leader can do and should do has also changed. I'm not claiming that we have a clear leader and everybody agrees on it, no, but we are in the process. And that this process and going through this process could be relatively fast to you know, meet the demands on the ground, and should not take credibility of these protesters away from them.
Thank you. Does anyone else have anything to add at this point?
No, I mean, I just wanted to agree with Sarah, because I also believe these are kind of new social movements that are organized mostly online. They're grassroots movements, and they're mostly leaderless, although I believe that, of course, we can use more organization and leaders in case of the Islamic regime, because they are kind of more violent and more suppressive than many other governments that we have seen. But I mean, there are, as Hale said, there are leaders on the ground. I mean, normal people that are on the street, there are leaders. I mean, among them, the leaders can emerge, can be made. It's a process, as you yourself mentioned. So I think we will see leaders, for example, Mothers for Justice, the mothers of people who have been killed 3 years ago in protest. There are kind of leaders, and they were emerged after the protests of 3 years ago. So we have this kind of people, and because the regime knows that the leaders can be helpful, they are trying to arrest and kill everybody that can be leaders. If, for example, look at people who have been killed, for example, Nika Shakarami, who has been killed in the street. If you look at the videos from her, she was a leader. She was the one in front of everyone, burning her scarf, shouting. So even on the street, they're trying to kill and eliminate any kind of leader, but they exist and they emerge.
Do you think, I've read that this movement is different from past ones in this respect, that there aren't any visible leaders organizing, and those protests were silenced too quickly because they were able to take out the leaders so quickly because they were visible, and so the followers then were not able to continue. And maybe perhaps now they're a little bit more incognito as who are the leaders so that they won't take them out. I don't know. That's something that I read and thought was an interesting point. I'm going to go ahead and ask a few more questions. This is great. The first one is from Shiran Ben Abdelrazak from Tunisia. Thank you for the excellent presentations. do you think it is possible to see an overthrow of the Iranian regime, keeping in mind the global political chess game and the different alliances? And then Pudia Abbasi from UCLA, how do you see the current leadership vacuum for a new roadmap for the future of Iran being resolved? And forgive me if you've answered these. If you have anything to say on that.
I think the first the question from Shiran was sort of answered because are we likely? Is it possible to see an Iranian overthrow over the Iranian regime? Inshallah, what can we say? We analyze the factors, we acknowledge the challenges, and we think that everything depends on how the events unfold, and there are of course some further pushes that are needed to be made in the system. There was one question, I think earlier we sort of maybe overlooked about the JCPOA, or did we not get to that? Do we want to talk a little bit about JCPOA now that we covered other topics?
Sure, go for it.
Yeah. So I think this is a message from Seema. If JCPOA collapses completely, what options are left? Look, this is a question that makes everybody nervous. Yesterday, for the third time, a building in south of Iran that has collapsed a while ago and left several dead, collapsed for the second time and had left some casualties. Yesterday, for the third time, another part of this very same building collapsed, and there were again more casualties. The next day, pictures are being distributed through online platforms and news agencies of the government to announce plans for building a new heavy water reactor and nuclear facility. So it is making everybody nervous. It is, and the establishment in Iran is using this as a threat to put pressure on the international community to say, and of course, this is the big elephant in the room. Nobody mentions it, but there is extreme anxiety in the international community that what if this regime fails and we have chaos in Iran? What's going to happen to the nuclear program? Who is going to get their hands on that? And these are all legitimate reasons and legitimate concerns. But what I suggest is that first, and foremost, we should not make compromises on human rights abuses in order to get a deal elsewhere with Iran. The conversation on Iran has been minimized to one topic for more than 1 decade. I'm in this business for nearly 15 years. I go to conferences, I travel, I go to university, I sit down with policymakers. There is absolutely no interest to talk about human rights violation, about accountability, about good governance in Iran. Everything is just about nuclear deal. Yes, I understand, I hear you, there is an anxiety, but it should not take over every other conversation with Iran. Are we likely to get a deal? I extremely doubt it. And not because the West doesn't want it, because Iranians don't want it. And from the get-go, from the moment that Raisi came to office, I was one of those people that warned everybody, I don't think this lot is interested in getting a nuclear deal, because they want to use it as a tool to put pressure on the international community to win brownie points. If Iran is a threshold nation, Iran has more advanced nuclear program, Iran can bully everybody else across the international community in a much more convenient way than if Iran is tied by the JCPOA. If Trump's withdrawal helped anybody in this world, in my opinion, was the Iranian regime, because that legitimized all of their bad behaviors and that legitimized all of their violations in terms of their nuclear program.
Can I add also something? I mean, I totally agree with Sarah about negotiating with Iran right now. I mean, from a different angle, normally Western governments would say that we don't want to intervene in, for example, Iran, which I totally agree. Right now, Iranians made it clear that they don't recognize the Islamic Republic as their legitimate government. So if they negotiate with this government right now, it's like intervening in Iran. because people don't recognize this regime. They don't want the Islamic Republic. So why would you why would you negotiate with a regime that people don't want it clearly? This is like, for me, this is like intervening in another country's matter. And that's, I mean, this is just another angle that I think they should basically stop negotiations until we see what's going to happen, and until basically there is some other sort of system that they can negotiate with it, and Iranians recognize it as legitimate.
Okay, I'm going to move on to a little bit different type of question. Robert Levine of the US, what can people outside of Iran do to make sure their governments hear the voice of Iranians and stand behind all the voiceless women of the world and stop any more bloodshed? How can we get our governments to understand that women must have the simple right of choosing the fundamental right of freedom of choice? And Sally Peel also asked a similar question. Can any of the panelists suggest a means for everyday American citizens to advocate and show support? Thank you for those important questions.
Okay. What the outside world can do, I mean, now at this point where we are, I think try and delegitimize these court cases that have started already in Iran. You know, they are putting 150 people, 200 people together, you know, and on trial. So, I mean, this is very important that it should come by the government should delegitimize it, the people should delegitimize it, the press should delegitimize it. And as I said earlier, I think there should be a lot of pressure to free the recent prisoners, the prisoners that have been taken from the streets, from schools, from home in the last 6 weeks. I mean, they should also, as a former prisoner, dual national, I hope they will free all the dual nationals they have arrested. They are going to put on trial, I think, 5 French people they have arrested. They announced it. So I just think if you're talking about concrete steps, this is very important. And the EU should also take a much stronger stand on relations with Iran, on pushing for Iran to stop its violation of human rights issues, and you know, continuing to provide the means of Iranian and non-Iranian in the diaspora to protest, you know, against what goes on in Iran. And you know, that is how I see what one can do, because the borderline between, you know, supporting and then the other end being accused of being supported by, you know, foreign government is very narrow. I mean, we all know that the majority of the people are not interested in a continuation of the regime. But on the other hand, if one can stop the killing and the arrest, you know, and the execution in prisons, one should not stop. One should continue doing it.
Merci. I'm going to take it a little more broad now. I have 2 questions, one from Salwa Salhoul of Tunisia. In Tunisia, we support Iranian women, their fight against the Islamic regime. The Arab revolutions faced this danger, but our female civil society was a wall against them. What is the role of the female civil society during the current protests? And then Anne Moisan from NISA in the US. Mahia referenced what is happening in Iran as the first feminist revolution. Will this feminist revolution go global, and will it be more successful than the Arab Spring Revolution in evoking radical and much needed change, and why?
Well, I mean, just regarding the second question, I mean, I hope so. Again, it's not easy to predict, but We have already seen kind of international support. We have seen this time feminists, because for me, one of the things that makes me really sad is that before that, Iranian women were fighting for these rights, for these things for more than 40 years. But it seemed like their voices weren't heard enough. So we haven't seen that much, for example, support from feminists all over the world. For example, in terms of hijab, what they wanted actually was my body, my choice, the thing that is really a feminist value. Everybody kind of agrees on right now, but their voice wasn't heard until now. So right now, I think we have seen international support. We have seen people calling this the first feminist revolution, because the values that they are representing is really progressive feminist. So I hope that this time, by really supporting women from Iran, from not the free world this time, because we should remember that these values are universal. Equality, freedom, these are not Western values. Before this, I mean, it was kind of considered that, okay, what Iranian wants, probably they don't, their culture is different. So hijab, for example, is part of their culture, so we should respect it. So it was the kind of the voice of Iranians for me kind of was distorted. And going back to like previous question, I mean, for example, I think I'm really thankful for this panel, because right now kind of alternative voices of Iran are being heard. I mean, this wasn't the case before this revolution, before this protest. There was this narrative that hardliners, reformists is kind of cultural, hijab is not important anymore, morality police is not violent, people are not respecting hijab on the street. So we have seen that they have killed a woman on the street, so hijab is still an issue. But the narrative outside Iran was like, no, it's resolved. So I believe that we should listen to alternative voices, people that might not have perfect English, but they have a right to speak about their experiences, their lived experiences, and about the universal values like equality. So I hope that this becomes really a global movement, and we continue seeing this international support from feminists as well.
Thank you.
Can I just add one quick comment to the previous question? What could people do in the Western world? Demand your governments to put pressure on the Iranian regime to stop the violence, stop the killing. Call on the United Nations, call on the international organizations, call on EU Parliament to put pressure, stop the killing now. Halijan mentioned release of the prisoners. Of course, that's an important part. Violence, killing, beating, raping have to stop, and there has to be a process in place to keep the perpetrators accountable, because it's beyond imagination what's happening in Iran. They young women that are being subject to all of these violence, the young and you know, across various age ranges, but the faces of this revolution, the faces of this uprising are all young. They are all full of life. They were all full of hope, and these are symbolizing the future of Iran. By killing them, they are killing the Iranian people's future, and that has to stop.
Thank you, Sarajan. Wow, this has been amazing, and we still have so many questions that we did not get to, and I apologize to the audience if we were not able to get to yours, but that just shows how thirsty the world is to hear more about this topic, and hopefully we'll have more in the future, and encourage everyone to go to other events supporting the topic. As we're going to wrap, can we please have the panelists maybe say a few of their final views in about a minute or so? Unfortunately, we've come to the end.
I'm full of hope for this movement, and I think it will continue. And the reason is that the leadership of the current movement are the women. It's the women who don't give up and are coming on the street, and they put the men in a special position so that they think they have to follow the women. So I have a lot of hope, but I don't want to predict anything. Thank you for having us here.
Thank you.
As a final thought, I just want to again say that continue echoing Iranians' voice, because that's the thing that we need the most. I mean, if we are still in the news, if Iran is still in the news, if we have the international attention, it can help us pressure the Western governments to take serious action. So don't think that you can't help Iranians. What you're doing right now by supporting, by echoing their voice, but by kind of trying to make Iran in the news, it's helping Iranians. So just continue doing that, and don't give up on us.
Very important. Thank you. Last but not least.
Thank you very much. Thank you to UCLA. Thank you to the panelists. Thank you to Salome. If you see an Iranian, ask about them how they are, because we are all in extreme pain these days. Whether we are inside Iran or outside, we are in pain. Ask them how they are, sympathize with them, support them. Don't let us down, because Iran needs the world and needs international support. Thank you.
Thank you so much. First of all, to our panel, I know all of you are very busy in general, but especially right now. So we really appreciate you taking time for us and helping our audience understand this issue a little bit better. I'm very grateful for my team at CMED and just organizations like CMED that exist. Iran doesn't have this opportunity. You know, they don't have organizations like CMED who can freely talk about issues. And so I feel very proud to be a part of this, this team and this work that we're doing here. And also thank you again to all of our co-sponsors at UCLA who helped us spread the word about the event. Please keep your eyes on our social media pages and on our inbox, if you're on our mailing list, that we will continue to share about future webinars that are happening. And before we go, in the spirit of support, I have to tell you about a discussion that's hosted by our colleagues at the UCLA UCLA Iranian Studies Department, which has been around for about 50 years. I didn't know that. 4 experts will be discussing the movement, and they will be doing so in Farsi, which is really cool. So please tell your friends and family members who may be interested in that. The event is happening this Sunday, and we have shared details for you in the chat window at the bottom of your screen. We hope that you can support as many events about Iran as possible, and please, please, please help to amplify the voices of those on the ground. That's the best we can do at this point. Thank you and farewell. Zan Zindagi Azadi.